You are listening to the Beyond Terrestrial Podcast, your one-stop shop for the outstanding, the unconventional, and the downright strange. Strap in because the boys are about to take a wild ride. I'm Funk Master B, setting up that tea for the duo of dumb foolery. Your hosts, Dan and Lee.
Of course I believe in aliens. I mean, in an infinitely growing universe, why would we be the only living species? Bigfoot, Nessie, all that stuff, it's gotta be real. How are we to say that we're the only ones? It's just ignorant. I think aliens are not only from other planets, but they're time travelers.
Good morning, Beyonders! Welcome back to Beyond Terrestrial, your home for the strange, the macabre, the conspiratorial, and the all things supernatural. My name's Lee. I'm coming to you from the Haunted Barn Studios, and that is just outside of the Bell Witch's backyard. Yeah, she moved the fence on me. I'm now no longer in the Bell Witch's backyard, just to the left of it. But hey, I've got a friend. I've got a partner in crime. Dan, how you doing today?
Really good, really good. I am Dan Morrison, recording just down from the crossroads where Robert Johnson made his infamous deal with the devil. And he is way too early in the morning to do this, Lee. Way too early.
Yeah, it is. We've time-stamped ourselves. We are recording in the wee hours of the morning. Dan has almost no energy because he is waking up. I am ready to shut down for the night because that's how we roll. Dan's waking up early for you, and I'm staying up late for you.
This is the crazy lifestyle we live. What are you gonna do? Lee, you're like a rock star. You're up until 4, 5, 6 a.m. sometimes because you're like that. Party all night and sleep all day.
Yeah, well, that's the best part about being near-divorced. I don't know. Never mind. So
you just raging all night long.
Well, with enough sex,
rock
drugs,
on,
and
brother.
rock and roll, like you can really have a good time.
Yes, dude. The subject of today's show is rock and roll.
Yes, specifically about some people of the night. I don't know what I'm saying, Dan.
Wait, you mean rock and roll vampires? Is that what you're trying to say, Lee?
Like, some of them may be. I'm not sure. I kind of Jim Morrison. Well, maybe.
Or was that like a euphemism for groupies?
No, I don't know what I'm going for. Like I was trying to make a joke and I didn't know where the hell it was going. I just started talking and waited to see what came out.
We're a little loopy already. We haven't even started.
Yes, exactly.
But hey, before we get going, Lee, I think if there are any aspiring rock stars out there listening, we will be sharing some cautionary tales today about folks who joined the 27 Club, and that means they were awesome, they were rock stars, they lived it up, but they burned the candle at both ends, and they passed away much too soon, but somewhat suspiciously, all at the age of 27.
Yes. It sounds like a nightclub that everybody wants to get into, right? But it's actually like the worst possible club you could be a part of.
Wait, Lee. They're dying to get in.
Oh.
Dad joke. Drink.
Oh, no. Guys, we are talking about the 27 Club, and we are specifically talking about, 5 people from that club?
Yeah, we picked out 4 or 5. We're just going to talk for a little bit about each one. Maybe go into 1 or 2 a little bit more in depth. So we've done a little bit. But before we start talking about rock stars, if you want to be a rock star, if you want to sound like a rock star, you guys got to get hooked up with our boys our editors over at Simple Equations Media.
Yes, they are an all media controlling people. Dan always does this plug, so I'm trying to improvise, and I'm doing a horrible job at it.
You make them sound all powerful, which is great. They are good, but they're not Disney. They're not secretly controlling all media.
Fair.
No, they are a full service audio video production company based in sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. If you are a garage band who needs a music video, if you need something shot for your business, a training video, something like that. If you're trying to break into music or TV or film, the guys at Simple Equations Media have your back. They can do it all. They can shoot video. They can record your audio. They can edit. They can take an idea from pre-production all the way through post. They're good dudes. They make us sound good, so we got to give them a shout out.
That takes a lot to make us sound good, so it's impressive.
Yeah, and extra today because, goddamn, it's early in the morning.
Yeah, it is pretty bad. Dan's hurting a little bit more than me, but I'm getting kind of loopy, ready to go. So.
Okay, so let's dive into it, Lee. The 27 Club. We already told folks what it is.
Yes.
And it turns out, Lee, in my in-depth research that I did for today's episode by going to Wikipedia.
Ooh, solid one.
You're welcome.
Solid. Good. Yeah, I'm proud. I was going to say all 20 minutes of it, but okay.
Yeah, there you go. A little bit more than that. But the thing is, the 27 Club has identified members going all the way back into the 19th century, the 1800s.
I did not know it goes back to the 1800s. I thought it was a more modern thing. I thought, basically at the birth of rock and roll.
Well, I don't know if you know this, Lee, but some of these composers back in the day were pretty rock and roll.
Okay. All right. I get it.
I mean, there's stories of guys who were, hooking up with all of the courtesans of Europe. And I think Paganini once played his violin with like cat guts or something like that. Super metal.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Hardcore.
Jeez.
So one of the earliest members of the 27 Club was a dude named Alexandre Levy. He was a Brazilian composer.
Okay.
And he is considered in Brazil to be one of their great musical masters. He was a prodigy, a virtuoso, multi-instrumentalist. He was like the dude. And on the 17th of January 1892, he died mysteriously at the age of 27. He had dinner with some friends, complained of illness, and before the doctor could even show up, boom, dead. See you later.
Wow. So, to me, it's really weird with the whole theory of the 27 Club. It just seems like an awkward number, but I wonder, and I'm sure somebody's done a study, but I wonder if we were to say, this many people died at 48, and looked for celebrities that died at 48, could we find a connection on that?
Yeah, I think so. That might be one of those Bader Meinhof sort of things again, where once something is out there and people start looking for it, it becomes a thing. Like people start noticing it. And I think there was a period of a couple years in the 60s and early 70s where this became very prominent in people's minds because of how many celebrities passed. And we're going to talk about them individually. But if we want to get into weird stuff, Lee, because why wouldn't we? Want to get
Let's
into
get
weird
to the
stuff.
weird stuff. I love the weird stuff.
There is a member of the 27 Club who we've wanted to do a full show on, who I mentioned in my intro.
You mean Robert Johnson was a part of the 27 Club?
Robert Johnson, famous Mississippi blues man, part of the 27 Club. And
I'm actually not surprised at that because I already knew that, but that's because I'm part of the show. So,
right. Did he pass away early because he had sold his soul to the devil for the mastery of the blues guitar? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not saying any of the celebrities we are about to talk about have sold their soul to Satan.
But that's what this theory kind of prevails, right?
They were all extremely skilled, and they all didn't make it past 27. So what are you going to do? And it turns out in some cases they have some pretty unique little connections to each other. So we will dive into the 27 Club, our selected celebrities, and how they could all be connected after we take a quick break.
All right, guys, welcome back to Beyond Terrestrial. We're sitting down to discuss a few of the prominent members of the 27 Club, not ones that you might have heard of recently, more of ones that were kind of significant in the era. So I'm going to throw this back over to Dan so he can tell us a little bit more about, who was it again?
So the first member of the 27 Club that I want to discuss is Brian Jones. Brian was a founding member of the Rolling Stones.
Good rock band, Mick Jagger. Yep, I got you. Okay.
Yeah, Jagger Richards. That's really what most people think of now. Of course, you know, Jagger being the front man. A lot of people would come up with that. But it turns out, Lee, Brian Jones was actually the driving force behind the Stones. He recruited Mick Jagger for the band.
Oh, wow. Wow, so he was kind of the lead guy for it.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, he was the driving force. He wasn't a front man. He wasn't really a singer, but he recruited Mick. He got the band together, essentially. And of course, Mick brought along Keith Richards with him. So yeah, I mean, that's how it happened. Brian was an extremely talented multi-instrumentalist. Much like Prince later on, people are familiar with Prince, playing all the instruments. Brian Jones could play the guitar. Most of what you hear in the Stones music is him doing guitar, but he did sitar. He even played the recorder. Like he played
That's awesome.
On the records. Like he played all kinds of stuff. He played the kazoo, the mellotron, like saxophones, clarinet. I think he was taught classically on the clarinet in school. Like just all kinds of stuff like that. He played everything. So extremely talented. His father was like a piano teacher and a doctor. Like he's from a very musical family. So there you go. I mean, he just had a ton of musical skill. He was a big fan of the blues. Okay. And if you go back and you listen to the early Stones, you can hear that influence. He named the band.
Wow. So he basically was the Rolling Stones. Like he was.
He was, like I said, he was a driving force behind what became the Rolling Stones. And the story of how he named the band is kind of crazy. They got a call from like a venue owner to get booked for a gig. And he's like, okay, what are you guys called? and no, they didn't have an answer. And it just so happens they had an album like The Best of Muddy Waters or something like that that was laying on the ground, and one of the songs is like a Rolling Stone or something like that, and he picked it up and was like, that's it, or Rolling Stone Blues or something like that is the song title. He's like, we're the Rolling Stones.
Nice.
So, and it was for a while Rolling Stones without the G, but the G's better. I think it's better with the G.
Yeah, I think it is too. Rolling Stones sounds a little too hip.
It's just a little. It's honestly easier just to have it with the G. I think it's easier to remember. So some other notable like musical things that he did with the Stones, he taught Mick Jagger how to play harmonica.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there you go. So he kind of created the Stones guitar sound along with Keith Richards. Richards calls it the ancient art of weaving. What they would do is they'd kind of both play rhythm and lead.
Okay.
And they'd weave the guitars together, the different sounds. So like this was all developed with Jones, and it's part of the Stones sound today.
Okay.
So one of the longest lasting rock bands in the history of the world, which is crazy that the rest of them haven't died early with the rock star lifestyles they lived.
Yes, absolutely. Some of them, it's just like, wow, how are you still alive?
Dude, okay, all right. This is not a Brian Jones story, but Keith Richards snorted his dad's ashes, right?
Yes.
With a line of coke, mixed it together. Pow.
Well,
yeah.
He's staying
rock
close
stars.
to him. Rock stars.
So yeah, like this sound is famous, and some of his musical contributions also included the guitar riff in Paint It Black.
What?
Yeah, that's part of what he helped the Stones lay down. So there's all kinds of early Stones music, all the way up to like Jumpin' Jack Flash, where he was very involved. But Lee, of course, things can't work out if you're in the 27 Club.
No, they've got to end early, right?
Yeah. So he became estranged from the band over a period of time. He was always a loner. He was always a nonconformist, even in school. There's something odd about folks who are this talented. Prince was always bit of an odd guy. Brian Jones also just put people off, wasn't very social. And in a group setting, it would often make him a target of ridicule. And a big moment, a watershed moment, came in March of 1967 when his girlfriend, Anita Pallenberg, left him for Keith.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
They were on a vacation in like Morocco or some shit. And she ditched him for the other guitarist.
Ooh, there's a connection there, like a big one.
Oh, see? This is a good one. We'll circle back. So yeah, this moment in 67 started driving Jones deeper and deeper into substance abuse, which, I mean, they were already doing. I mean, they were already getting drunk, doing drugs, right? But now he's kind of gone off the deep end a little bit. So a number of drug busts were to follow. But in March he got dumped. In June, Lee, 1967, he had a bit of a crossover with some other members of the 27 Club.
Okay.
He attended the Monterey Pop Festival in Monterey, California, which was a watershed moment in the career of two other 27 clubbers. Janice Joplin, who really broke out at Monterey.
Okay.
And he introduced Jimi Hendrix at the Monterey Pop Festival.
Oh, wow.
Hendrix famously comes out, shreds.
Mm-hmm.
People are blown away in the United States. They've never heard what he's doing with feedback and the whammy bar on his guitar, like just kills it. And at the end of Hendrix's set at Monterey, he pours lighter fluid over his guitar.
Okay.
And burns it on stage, right? And that picture of him burning that guitar at Monterey is famous.
Yeah. It's either...
So...
Yeah. No, I get with you on that.
Huge moment where Jones crosses over to these other famous 27 clubbers.
Yes.
So back in England, he had after Monterey, he had multiple drug busts for, possession, driving infractions. Like he wrecked a motorcycle into a plate glass window, like all kinds of stuff. Dude was on a destructive downhill spiral, and it when it came time for the Stones to tour for their next album, which was Let It Bleed, they couldn't get a work permit to bring him to the United States. He had been busted for drugs so many times that they weren't going to allow him back in the U.S. And so this is only a couple years after Monterey. This is June 8th, 1969. The Stones kicked him out of the band. They went to his house, they got together and said, hey, we're going to keep touring. You can't come with us, so bye.
Yeah. That sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I mean, they were kind of right.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do, right? You got this. And so the thing is, the Stones, Brian Jones loved the blues, right? That was his thing. He wanted the band to keep doing blues songs. But the songwriting duo of Richards and Jagger was very lucrative. And, they own the songs, so they're not playing covers. There's actually more money in, writing your own music.
Yeah.
And they wanted to promote Jagger. He's the front man and very flamboyant. So the Jagger Richards combo was kind of out front. And Brian Jones and the direction that he wanted the band to go, that was fine early on, but they had kind of moved past what he was doing musically.
Well, and what I just see is from the band's point of view, I mean, they're touring. This guy's already been a bit of a problem, and now he's creating something where we either wait around until he can get his crap together and get things going again, or we move on to a new person that can keep us driving forward. You've got to go with that kind of thought process. So if he can't get into the country, then their tour's out the window, right? Unless they replace.
Yeah, totally.
Him. So,
yeah, and to the Stones' credit, they gave him sort of the lead on this. They're like, hey, however you want to put it out to the public why you're leaving the band, like go ahead and and do that. And so he put out a statement, we're going different directions, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it was sold to the public. Like it was just, a musical split. But there was a lot of other stuff behind it, these legal issues. So June 8th, 1969, he gets kicked out of the Stones. And in the wee hours of July 3rd, not even a month later, he's not with us anymore, and he's in the 27 Club. So it didn't take long, Lee. Now there's some interesting things about the death of Brian Jones. He died at an estate in East Sussex called Cochford Farm. Cochford Farm. The Cochford Farm, Lee, had another famous owner before Brian Jones, a one A.A. Milne. Do you know the works that A.A. Milne is famous for, Lee?
No, I don't.
Well, a lot more wholesome than sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Is it Little House on the
A.A.
Prairie?
Milne, close, very close. A.A. Milne wrote Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, wow. That's very wholesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Well, around midnight, sometime, like I said, probably on July 3rd, Jones was found motionless in the swimming pool by his Swedish girlfriend, Anna Wolin. And they called the ambulance, but she was convinced he was still alive, even though he was found unresponsive in the swimming pool, not moving at all. He was declared dead on arrival at the hospital. So
yeah.
So that was it. The inquest or whatever, the medical examiner declared, this is such a British euphemism, Lee. I can't even believe they put this on people's death certificate. The cause of death for Brian Jones, death by misadventure.
Wow.
Yeah, if that's what you call getting really high and falling into a swimming pool, yeah, I guess misadventure's right.
Wow, it makes it sound like, like it should be an episode of Winnie the Pooh, like the misadventures of Tigger and Piglet.
Right. It sounds very, like I said, very British. What a euphemism.
Yes. Oh, bother.
Only the British could come up with that. Yeah, right. Oh, it was just a misadventure.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, that's the story, Lee. That's what happened to poor Brian Jones and how he became a member of the 27 Club. But I would be remiss if I neglected the murder theory.
Murder.
So it turns out that a dude named Frank Thorogood was a builder, a contractor, who had done some work at Cochford Farm. He was paid like £18,000 for all this work that he did out there at the estate. But he wanted more money from Jones. So there is a theory that he went out there trying to get like 6,000 more pounds and did the dirty deed, and Jones ended up in the pool dead.
It just felt like you were reaching, Dan. Like, it just felt like that story's like a little bit of a reach.
Yeah, well, some journalists have done some in-depth work on this. He was, I believe, the last person seen at the house with Jones. So there is some legit stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
Could it ever be proven? Maybe not. The problem is the police in Sussex have gone and reviewed the case, and they're like, oh no, this is just fine. Yeah, that's right. Death by misadventure, totally. There's a theory that maybe this wasn't investigated properly at the time that it happened, and the police are covering up some of the evidence of their either A, bungling, or B, knowledge that this might have actually been a crime, and they just failed to bring the evidence forward or recognize the evidence that this was a crime.
Fair. I guess that's fair. I don't know. To me, like, the story as it is like, it's easy to believe that he just got really high and fell into the pool. Like,
yeah, I mean, right? I mean, you, on the one hand, you're like, oh, well, maybe they did bungle it. But on the other, it just seems so obvious when you show up. Mm-hmm. This person who has a history of drug abuse, who has drugs in their system, could, take too much, drink too much, fall into the pool,
not be capable of getting himself back out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, it seems so cut and dry. On the other, you're like, oh, well, this would be a great way to cover up a crime, right?
Yeah. My issue is it does imply, and I mean, I guess there is something to be said about that, like why the police would want to hide it. But my issue is you're banking on the police bumbling the investigation, right? That was the only thing there that I thought was a little strange. Because, I mean, even currently, if they reopen an investigation in the U.S. and they find that somebody did commit murder, they can convict that person of murder.
Yeah, there is no statute of limitations on murder. That is true.
I would guess that it's very similar in England. I know they've got a lot of crazy laws, like spitting.
Yeah, no, and they did, like I said, they did recently review the case. It was in, oh, shoot, I didn't write that down in my notes. It was in the 2010s, like, 2015-ish sort of era. So
that's kind of what I'm talking about, though. Like, even then, wouldn't they want to seek justice for the situation?
Well, the problem is now, if it was bungled back in 69, this many years separated from the event, it would be very hard to prove that something happened, especially if there isn't a complete record like there should be.
Oh, fair.
So,
all right.
Anyways, Lee, that is Brian Jones and tendrils towards some of our other celebrities, some of our other 27 clubbers.
Yes. Guys, I'm here to tell you tonight about Jimi Hendrix. Hendrix was a virtuoso at the guitar. What you said about Bob... Who was it again? I apologize.
Brian Jones.
Brian Jones. I almost said Bob Dylan, and I realized that I was wrong. What you said about Brian Jones, it's tenfold but specified on the guitar with Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix bursts onto the scene and changes the whole way that people play. Famous rockers actually say that they do rock for before and after Jimi Hendrix because he changed the game. Unfortunately, he liked to burn real hot. Hendrix was known to be a heavy drinker. He loved acid. Funny enough, Hendrix was the nicest person in the world. He had the most opening smile. Nobody could hate this guy. But when he got drunk, he got mean. to the point where there's assault situations between him and his girlfriends. But other drugs he really liked, particularly heroin and acid. And this got him into trouble quite a bit. There's several situations where him being into drugs got him into trouble. The number one, which is interesting because he also claims to contemplate how long he's got to live at that situation, is landing in Canada and getting basically getting caught with a bunch of drugs. Now the crew and the plane knew, and this is what the really weird part about this is. Hendrix knew about them be waiting for the Canadian police waiting for them at the tarmac to search them for drugs. So they knew, and they went around and they told everybody, and everybody, one by one went to the bathroom, flushed their drugs, right? And it comes back around, and their manager comes back to Hendrix, and he's like, "Hey, are you straight?" Hendrix says yes. He's got nothing on him, right? They land. They get stopped. They get searched. Out of Hendrix's bag, a glass vial and basically evidence of drug paraphernalia come out. Hendrix doesn't know where that came from. He doesn't understand. He doesn't know that it came from, potentially came from the girl he was with the night before. And this comes from his autobiography, essentially. They were not autobiography, but biography. Police catch him. They're his. Honestly, he was probably just high and forgot that they were in there. Most likely scenario for me. But
this bust, this is crazy. This is like how things were in the 70s, where the flight crew would just be like, "Hey guys, ditch all your drugs before we land. Thank you for flying the friendly skies." Like we're all cool here, right? Like you could smoke on the plane and shit, and they were like, "Okay, let's all be cool. Let's all be cool."
Cool.
All right, guys, we're gonna land. The cops are gonna be there. Be cool.
Be cool, guys. Be cool.
Ain't no thing.
I believe it was a private flight, was the gist that I kind of got of it. But even as a private flight, It seems a little crazy, right?
Yeah, dude.
So Hendrix gets busted, and at that time, he ends up... The biggest things he's worried about is whether or not he's going to be able to play the show that night. Well, they get lucky. The detective that comes in basically says, "Hey, my kid's got tickets to the show. I'm going to let you play before we arrest you."
Nice.
So basically they play, then he goes to jail. He ends up spending a couple nights in jail, and then he comes back to the U.S., and he's got a court date for 9 months later. At that time, he had remarked to somebody that he didn't know if he'd make it to that 9-month mark, and he didn't.
That sucks, man. It's crazy how these guys have a sense of foreboding about their lives sometimes. Abraham Lincoln famously had foreboding. Mm-hmm. And a guy like Hendrix, who's so well-liked, who's so talented, he knows he's burning the candle at both ends. So yeah, that's crazy. I think it's crazily Hendrix, has a bit of a connection out in the Clarksville area. After he was in the Army.
He does.
So props to the Bell Witch's backyard.
Yes. Hendrix was a member of the 101 Screaming Eagles. Our local Army base, Fort Campbell, is where they come from, where they hail from. And he was actually a member of that. So that was kind of a cool little thing to learn today.
Yeah, I found that out. And they did a bunch of gigs after he got out of the Army. He was based out of Clarksville.
Mm-hmm.
They did gigs all over Middle Tennessee. So
yeah,
Hendrix often associated with the Seattle area, right?
Yeah,
because that's where he was born and that's where he's buried.
mm-hmm.
But he was all over it. We went to the Museum of Pop there in Seattle, and they had a great exhibit about his time in London, which is where he ended up passing away eventually.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, though. His life had ups and downs. At one point, he gets literally kidnapped because of his drug problem.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Yeah. So Hendrix had a pretty crappy show. He's not happy with how the show went, and he goes out front, meets a couple of guys, gets in their car, rides home with them, and then gets kidnapped by these two guys.
What? Can you?
With the promise of drugs,
Dude,
right? Like
the 60s, man. You could be a rock star, finish your set, and just like get in a car with some random people from the audience. Like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. Let's get some acid, bro.
The best part is that didn't ruin Jimi Hendrix's idea. He meets a stranger in Seattle, gets a ride around town in Seattle by a random kid because he wants to show his girlfriend around where he grew up. Like,
yeah, dude. What so cool. Like, honestly, could you imagine going to some of these shows back in the day where you pay like $5 for a ticket and see some of the greatest rock acts that have ever been, right?
yeah.
I mean, the 60s and 70s, that was peak, and you could just be high off your mind because everyone had drugs.
Yes.
It could be totally psychedelic. It could be, I mean, these experiences people could have back in the day. I mean, there's nothing comparable to it this day and age. Nothing.
No, not really. You don't have those experiences. You don't have the Woodstocks, which was one where Hendrix, Morrison, and Janice all played at Woodstock. So
Yep, they cross over, man, these 27 clubbers.
So the crossover that I wanted to talk with you about real quick actually is in relation to Mick Jagger. So your poor man had his girlfriend stolen by Mick Jagger.
Yep. Or by Keith Richards, actually.
Keith Richards.
Yeah, it was Keith. Yeah.
I think that ruins it because
It still works, man.
Mr. Hendrix stole Mick Jagger's girlfriend, and then she was berated because she got kicked off the tour because he found her dating Mick Jagger.
So like
shit.
He's all right. Let's straighten this out. So he stole Mick's girlfriend and then she went back to him, or
no,
he was
sorry.
dating her and then she went to Mick. Okay.
Yeah. So she was with Mick Jagger. Jimi Hendrix stole her from Mick Jagger, and then Mick Jagger did something to blackball her because she was with a black man, and then like talked a whole bunch of shit about her.
Ooh, rough, dude. Hey, we are finding out very much more and more in the news recently. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. The UK still a little racist,
just a bit.
Just a bit. But not like their cousins over here across the pond.
Yeah, I mean, we're so much more progressive than they are.
Theirs is a little bit different, a little more stuffy and traditional, I think. But whatever, British people.
Yeah. So Hendrix gets kidnapped. Hendrix also gets pressure. Oh, he gets kidnapped and saved by the mob because, surprise, surprise, Hendrix's, what's his name? His producer, his agent, is in with the mob. But by in with the mob, meaning he owes the mob a bunch of money.
Oh, there you go. Well, he won't be able to pay him back if his client doesn't do a gig.
Yes. Yes, that's pretty much what it is, right? So the mob busts Hendrix out. Keeps it under wraps, never gets out there that Hendrix got kidnapped and then was saved by the mob, basically. In fact, nobody knows that Hendrix got kidnapped.
That's a great little story. So how did our man Jimi, the world's greatest left-handed guitarist, end up in the infamous 27 Club?
Well, it starts out with one of his girlfriends having a bunch of barbiturates to help her sleep. So
the moral of the story is, like, we found Brian Jones found by his girlfriend.
Yes.
Jimi Hendrix
not found by his
dead.
girlfriend.
Oh, really?
No, found by his agent.
Ooh.
I believe it's agent.
But it wasn't the last person he was with was supposed to be the girlfriend?
Yes. The girlfriend got up at like 2 a.m. and just left.
So
claimed to
the moral
not
of the story
know
is
what happened to him. Claimed to think he was
don't have a girlfriend.
might be a good point. Yeah.
If you want to rock and roll all night and party every day, don't have a girlfriend.
That might be a good idea. Might be great.
Smart.
So Hendrix, according to the official story, washed a bunch of barbiturates, like a small handful of barbiturates, down with some red wine. Interesting thing to note, there was red wine on Hendrix's collar and all over his clothes, in his hair. There was red wine in his mouth and throat. But guess where there wasn't any red wine?
In his stomach?
Yeah, there wasn't any wine in his stomach.
Ooh.
So,
but wasn't he like vomiting? That's the official ME thing, like he asphyxiated on vomit.
Yes. Or he was maybe killed by the mob because his agent had a $2 million life insurance policy on him.
Right. And it sounds very fishy with this whole girlfriend too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she just happens to have all these sleeping tablets that you can take, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says on there he took something like 18 times the recommended dosage.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
It
okay.
was like 9
I
pills, and it was like, 18 times the recommended dosage, meaning those pills were supposed to be split in half, people. Like,
yeah, it seems a little bit like either A, just total disregard, which is possible. I mean, rock stars, you know, or B, he didn't know really what he was taking, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe the girlfriend should have known,
mm-hmm.
or C, she did know, and you know, let him to his death.
Yeah. Well, according to the official story, the girlfriend had left the room, went to bed apparently when he took those pills. Supposedly.
Supposedly.
Now, there's also accusations that he may have been killed due to racist apathy by the EMTs or the paramedics, that whatever they would call themselves at that time.
Oh, right, because he was still alive when he was found, but he was unresponsive, right?
Yes, supposedly. So there's accusations that he was alive and awake when they left because he supposedly was woken up by the EMTs.
Possible. I mean, there's all kinds of weird medical issues that can go on, and I mean, especially in this touch and go situation.
Yeah.
Right. Any delay, anything overlooked.
Mm-hmm. But here was the accusation that they did not help him. All they did was wake him up and then drive him to the hospital. Not the nearest hospital. They drove on to the next hospital and supposedly didn't do anything to help him, to keep him alive.
Wow.
Once again, that's an interesting story, interesting accusation. Is it believable? Yeah, I mean, racism was a real thing back then. I guess it's believable. I can't put my head in those people's heads, but my guess would be yes. Is it the most likely story? Again, I'm not sure.
Well, and you never know. We've talked about stories where like a perfect storm of conditions come together.
Yeah.
Right. So it could be, ignorance on the part of the girlfriend, or, some kind of deliberate inaction from her. It could be, these EMTs show up, rock star, ODing or whatever. Maybe they think he's not as bad. If you said he was awake, maybe they don't realize how serious his condition is, or they just don't care. Okay. So these combinations of factors can sometimes lead to the worst possible result.
Yeah, and I think that that's definitely a possibility. And the thing with the red wine in the stomach, the accusation is that the red wine was forced down his throat by the mobsters when they were when they were killing him, basically.
Seems like it might be a stretch, but I mean, you never know. We had a murder theory in the case of Brian Jones, so who knows? Maybe this is part of it. This rock star lifestyle. Well, Lee, we are pushing on an hour. We've just talked Hendrix, who we love. We talked Brian Jones. We've got more 27 Clubbers coming up, but we should take a quick break.
All right, break time.
And we're back. We have been talking the 27 Club. Me and Lee each did one of our favorite 27 Clubbers. He was talking Hendrix. I was doing Brian Jones from the Stones. Some other infamous 27 Clubbers. Jimi Hendrix passed away September 18th, 1970. October 4th, 1970, he was quickly followed into the 27 Club by Ms. Janice Joplin.
Yes.
I think this is a big moment in the 27 Club for them to both pass away so close to each other.
I think that coupled with Jim Morrison would be because Jim Morrison wasn't much later. It was, I think, in 69.
So they died, Janice died October 4th, 1970. Jim Morrison died July 3rd, 1971. Get this, Lee, 2 years to the day after Brian Jones.
Wait, so Brian Jones, like all of this happened, Brian Jones, Hendrix, Joplin, Morrison, within a 2-year time frame?
2 years, yep.
It's easy to get that connection, like to think that there's some sort of thing there, right?
Right, and I think this is part of how the 27 Club became a thing. You just have 4 huge rockers all pass away within 2 years, all at the same age.
Yeah, and seemingly, well, I don't know, that maybe a little bit here and there for whether Hendrix or Joplin were bigger. I would argue Hendrix was a little bigger, but it almost seems like a progression in prominence because Morrison was the biggest one, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was a huge front man. Yeah, I mean, he was the Lizard King. Mm-hmm. He's on TV. He said higher on Ed Sullivan. People lost it. They're, oh my God, he said higher on TV.
I don't get it.
So when the Doors were on Ed Sullivan, he did. They were gonna do "Come On Baby, Light My Fire," mm-hmm. and one of the lyrics is "Girl, we couldn't get much higher." It was supposed to be changed for US TV. He said, screw that, we're doing it. He just did it. Oh, they talked about getting high on TV. This is the 70s, so 60s and 70s. That was crazy.
Fair.
But yeah, I mean, Janice is a crazy case because her and Jimmy are at Monterey and both have their big breaks at the same festival, right?
Yes.
Her group, Big Brother and the Holding Company, got signed to their record deal after Monterey.
Really?
Yeah. They both were at Woodstock. I mean, huge moments.
I think it was at Monterey where Janice kind of transitioned from being kind of an add-on tambourine player to actually being the front woman of the band.
Yeah, well, like I said, her voice is so unique, and they really exploded onto the scene.
Mm-hmm. But she wasn't originally the front person. Like she, just got. That's how they got big, was when they like put her out there in front. So
yeah, and someone heard her at this festival and was like, "That's it. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. Sign them. Boom."
Yeah.
And I mean, you're talking about like 3 years, a little bit more, from Monterey to when Janice passes away. So very quick, like a shooting star. And she was actually found dead in a hotel room, like Jimmy. Mm-hmm. But hers was in LA, from an apparent heroin overdose. Her case is weird because people saw her like at the front desk and stuff like that of the hotel after she had allegedly taken this heroin. So most people, when they OD, you know, it's like you shoot up and then you keel over, mm-hmm. right? Because that heroin's going straight into your vein, right? It's right into your system. But there are cases where, you know, people can be up and around before it takes them. And the case of Joplin's really weird because several of the other, shall we say, customers mm-hmm. of her dealer in LA all died on the same weekend.
Oh. Well, that just sounds like a bad batch.
Yeah, exactly. She got some bad drugs. It was either stronger than they all anticipated,
or it
was cut with something that, that in fact poisoned them all, essentially.
Yeah. So,
her case is really tragic that way. You know, when you get into drugs, man.
Yeah.
That's a risk you take. And then, you know, Morrison, the Lizard King, one of the coolest guys ever to be in the 27 Club, found dead in a bathroom by his girlfriend from an apparent heroin overdose.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. So there you go. I mean, it's all very similar. He was actually in Paris, France.
That's interesting.
So, his girlfriend Pamela Corson, Courson, I think Corson, found him dead there in Paris. His grave's still in Paris.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Morrison's grave's over there. It is visited very often by tourists and that sort of thing. So it is a pilgrimage site for fans of the Doors. But his girlfriend, get this, Lee, who found Jim Morrison dead, passed away 3 years later at the age of 27.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
Wow.
It's all connected, Lee. All connected. So wild and crazy.
Talking about Jim Morrison reminded me of one more thing I want to say about Hendrix.
All right,
there is a funny story of Jim Morrison basically hanging on Hendrix's leg, screaming Jimmy, while Hendrix is playing a solo. So, and then ends up getting up and like out of tune and out of sync with the music, just starts singing, takes the mic and completely fucked out of his head. Jim Morrison just being drunkenly hung on to Jimi Hendrix's leg. And that was an entertaining thought for me. Like, I thought it was funny.
Rock stars, man. Back in the
at
day,
a show.
they could do anything.
At a show, they're doing that.
Dude, so crazy. So yeah, I mean, they all intersect. Now, when it comes to the Doors, Lee, what's one of your favorites? Do you have any?
Oh,
the Doors. They got the Val Kilmer movie and everything like that. I think the Doors are probably one of the most recognized. I should say Jim Morrison, one of the most recognized members of the 27 Club.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What's some of your favorite of their works?
Dan, I kind of hate you for this one because you're going to make me sound unintellectual. Like, I play the drums and I'm a musician, but I could not name a Doors song.
I like L.A. Woman. L.A. Woman gets me every time. So yeah, I mean, crazy stuff. Talk about crossovers. Jim Morrison wrote a poem for Brian Jones after he died.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And they dedicated shows to Brian Jones.
Oh, wow.
After he had passed away. So, like, it's a thing. Like, there was this crossover. Morrison was famously a poet. He would do spoken word poetry like during the shows while the band played behind him. And I'm sure he probably delivered his poem about Brian Jones to audiences after he passed away. So, and then just a few years later became a member of the 27 Club himself.
Yes. It's a crazy thing. And when you look at it, there are some things like, wow, all these people died at the age of 27. I have to go back to, is it possible you take any subset of the ages and you can find a bunch of people that have died by it? Were they all rock stars? There's my question.
Yeah, maybe. I bet there's a famous 67 club of old rock stars too. We just don't know about it. But the thing is, the 27 Club has persisted to this day.
Yeah.
We have some modern examples of the 27 Club. Amy Winehouse,
big one,
probably the most famous, most recent.
Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger was 27?
I'm pretty sure.
Look that up, because I'm not so sure. It wasn't in the list that I saw, but
are you sure?
Maybe my list was about mostly focused on rock stars. Well, no, because actually in my list I have an actor here, Anton Yelchin.
Oh yeah, you told me about him.
Yes, he played Chekhov in the new Star Trek movies, in the J.J. Abrams Kelvin-verse
he was
reboot.
28.
See? Doesn't always happen that way. 27 Club. But the story, I actually looked at the story for Anton Yelchin. Very crazy, the story of his passing, Lee. he didn't show up for a rehearsal, and so they went to go look for him. And he was found pinned by his Jeep to the brick wall of the gate at his house. It appeared that he had stopped the vehicle to like go close the gate or something like that, and it rolled back and pinned him to the wall, and he passed away.
Wow.
I know, just a crazy, like 1 in a million accident.
But then you look at that and then you start thinking, is this some Final Destination kind of shit, right? Like,
I know, right? You would think. It actually turns out Fiat Chrysler got sued for all of this, the parent company of Jeep. They knew that these Jeeps had rollback issues, and there was a recall on them after this incident.
oh, wow.
And Yelchin's family sued the company, and they settled out of court.
Wow. That's crazy. It's really crazy.
So that's one of those weird things, man. Like, the 27 Club has a weird way of creeping up. It's not always, drugs and alcohol and rock and roll.
No, not always. I would argue Anton Yelchin, did not burn like as bright as those rock stars, though.
Yeah, definitely not as huge, not as famous. But like the thing is, it still persists to this modern day. A figure like Amy Winehouse, who famously did not want to go to rehab. She said no. Like,
Oh.
You okay over there?
No, I'm dying. That made me laugh a little too hard. Oh.
But no, I'm just, you can kind of see that coming. But it also pops up in, modern examples. People these days, they're not as into, heroin and acid and living that 60s rock star life. I'm sure there's a few out there who live it up, but it's just not quite the same.
No, I think that it's not quite. You see the evolution of rock stars that survived out of it, and how so many of like how more and more people survived longer as the rock star lifestyle is kind of morphed a little bit. You've got your people like Ozzy Osbourne that shouldn't be alive, but
yeah, right. Keith Richards, who was probably like embalmed internally with all the chemicals he took in.
Yes, Keith Richards. Yeah, just there are some of these ones that you're just like, wow, how did you survive? But you see more of those as you start getting later and later, right? Like you see more of the ones that you're like, wow, they burned bright, but they didn't die off. I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy.
Yeah, I think, like I say, times they are a changing, right? That's a rock star line. So, and for the better, thank goodness. People know what all this stuff does and the long-term effects. Right now, you've got a whole bunch of rock stars, and like the biggest thing they're into maybe is like Molly and weed, right? Not quite the same as the drugs people got in the 60s.
Well, in theory, yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. Alcohol's still there, but
yeah. And I guess what are some other famous rockers, pop stars? Probably one of the biggest ones that I could think of, not a member of the 27 Club, that, went a little too hard, might be like Whitney Houston.
Yeah, Whitney Houston went pretty hard.
Yeah, not a 27 Clubber.
Yeah.
And then, we just had Amy Winehouse. That was only a few years ago.
Yeah. Could you argue that what's her name? Lindsay Lohan, maybe?
Oh, but she's way older than 27 now.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that she's
past it. And she's still alive.
No, I'm not saying that she died. I was just saying that she went hard.
Yeah, I mean, true. I mean, it's like I said, people. I think people are more willing to go to rehab and stuff now. It's sort of accepted in celebrity circles that you eventually go to rehab, right?
Hey, some people do a really good job of it, like Steve-O. Like, have you seen some of his?
Yeah, dude. Props to that dude. Yeah. Seriously, yeah. And his recovery, yeah. So it's something that is different in this modern age where we're more willing to talk about substance abuse and mental health.
Robert Downey Jr.?
Oh, yeah. Props to RDJ. I was actually just watching, right before we started this, I was watching Charlie Bartlett, a movie that featured Anton Yelchin. Mm-hmm. Just to remember that was one of the first movies where I really recognized him as an actor, and he stood out to me. I had forgotten that RDJ was in the movie. I was like, oh, yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
So it's just the 27 Club is evolving as we are evolving, but I'm sure it will raise its tragic specter sometime in the future, and we'll all go, oh, 27, of course.
Wait a minute. Okay, what if the 27 Club did exist, right? When we lost 4 rockers in 2 years, right? That was the 27 Club, and all these rest of them are just like making connections.
Yeah, I mean, possible.
Anyway, moving on, sorry.
Yeah, I think
that was a really
these.
Yeah, never mind.
I think the 4 rockers who we highlighted really are the core of the 27 Club, but it persists, and it will, and it'll come up again, and people will, like I say, people will say, "Aha, there it is," because it's in people's minds now. And
we're helping to plant that seed.
Yeah, people are looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like they should be looking for more tales from out there beyond terrestrial.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Terrestrial, all 3 of y'all. If you're still a fan of this show, follow Beyond Terrestrial on social media and join the Beyonders Facebook group for even more strangeness. Links to everything, including previous episodes, are available at BeyondTerrestrial.com. That's the place to go for stickers, merch, show swag, and our Patreon. Patrons get exclusive access to ad-free shows, giveaways, and the unedited after-show show. Anything you give to the show goes straight to Funk Master B's bachelor pad, which for now is also where these jive turkeys record this show. This show was edited by Simple Equations Media with music by Mike Root. Dan and Lee will be back next Tuesday with more from Beyond Terrestrial.